Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into an incredibly fascinating presentation brought to us by Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa Formation. We're going to explore a really unexpected intersection where fine art, the concept of time, and cutting-edge biomechanics all collide. Put simply, we are going to completely deconstruct the human gesture itself. So, let me start by asking you a question that might sound, well, a little bit crazy at first. Could a scandalous piece of controversial art from way back in 1912 actually hold the secret to preventing modern sports injuries? I know, it sounds like pure fiction, but as we're about to see, the connection is absolutely real.
Think about Marcel Duchamp's famous painting, Nude Descending a Staircase. When Duchamp created this masterpiece, he wasn't just slapping a static figure onto a canvas. He was inventing a brilliant, entirely new method of superimposing successive states of a body in motion. By painting time rendered visible, Duchamp was essentially anticipating modern motion capture technology by a full 50 years. Now, critics back then, they didn't exactly get it. When the painting debuted at the 1913 Armory Show in New York, one critic famously, and honestly hilariously, dismissed it as an explosion in a shingle factory. But while that was meant as a stinging insult, the joke was totally on them. It's actually a highly accurate, albeit involuntary, biomechanical description of a human body acting as a complex system of gears, rods, and pistons. Section 1. Pioneers of Motion Capture. You see, Duchamp didn't just exist in a vacuum. This was part of a continuous scientific quest. Back in 1882, Etienne Jules Marais invented the photographic rifle, which captured 12 frames per second. Then, by 1887, Edward Muybridge gave us the first real biomechanical database with his animal locomotion series. In 1912, Duchamp translated that very science onto canvas. Fast forward to today, 2024, and Kinexa Formation's modern machine learning is the ultimate fulfillment of this 140-year-old quest to completely decompose and analyze the human gesture.
Section 2. Deconstructing the human gesture. Let's bring this into the real world and see how modern practitioners actually break down movement today, using the classic example of a simple squat. Every single phase of this movement demands a highly specific neuromuscular orchestration, from breaking static inertia at the initiation right into controlled braking during the descent. And pay attention to the gap risks here. If your timing is even slightly off during that eccentric descent, you risk a dynamic valgus. That's that dangerous inward knee collapse we constantly warn athletes about. Section 3. Explaining complex cycles. To really understand the most dangerous part of that squat, we have to look at the stretch shortening cycle, or SSC. Think of the human body like a cybernetic machine. In step 1, the eccentric phase, you are pre-activating and storing elastic energy in your tendons. It's exactly like pulling back a heavy rubber band. Step 2 is that critical reversal right at the bottom of the movement. And step 3 is the concentric release of that elastic energy. It's a beautifully simple 1-2-3 sequence, provided your body's internal gears don't misfire. But here is the absolute critical threshold you need to know: 250 milliseconds. In a fast SSC, if your transition in step 2 takes longer than 250 milliseconds, all that stored elastic energy, it just dissipates as heat. The stretch reflex literally shuts off, your force drops by up to 50%, and you are officially in the high-risk injury zone. This failure in timing creates what Dr. Delong and Kinexa call a neural gap. So what exactly is a neural gap? Well, it's that completely unseen millisecond where a misfiring signal, like a late inhibition command to an opposing muscle, forces your passive structures, like your ligaments and meniscus, to absorb massive loads instead of your muscles. Section 4. Where injuries actually begin. And that builds right into the terrifying reality of when and how sports injuries actually occur on the field. Brace yourself for this stat: 40 milliseconds. Between 70 to 80% of ACL tears are completely non-contact. Nobody hits the athlete. And they happen within a mere 40 milliseconds of landing, often simply because a medial hamstring fired just 20 milliseconds too late. Just a tiny, entirely imperceptible neural delay. Which exposes a massive, glaring problem. Your standard video camera captures 30 frames per second. But remember, an ACL tear happens in 40 milliseconds. The entire collapse of the knee literally happens between the frames. It is totally invisible to standard cameras. That is exactly why Kinexa's 1000 Hz force plates and their high-frequency tech are absolutely mandatory if you want to actually see the reality of an injury. Section 5. measuring the unseen metrics. So the crucial point here is understanding how we measure these micro-scale failures out in the real world, not just in theory. It all starts by looking at kinetic chains, contrasting how forces propagate. In a closed kinetic chain, like our squat example, your foot is planted firmly on the ground and forces move from the bottom up with automatic stabilization. Conversely, in an open kinetic chain, like kicking a soccer ball, your foot is completely free and forces move outward. Any rupture, any neural gap in the sequential logic of either of those chains creates a massive local overload. Which brings us right back to the core philosophy of the analytical audit. Understand first the logic of the mechanism. Much like Duchamp audited the mechanical steps of a walking figure on a staircase, modern injury prevention is all about auditing the cybernetic feedback loops of our spinal central pattern generators. We literally have to understand the logic of the machine before we can fix it. Section 6. Predicting the next injury. The amazing news is technology has finally caught up to see those neural gaps before disaster actually strikes. And honestly, this is where it gets incredibly sci-fi. Kinexa uses high-density EMG paired with advanced machine learning algorithms. By measuring exact transition metrics, things like the rate of force development and electromechanical delay, they can identify pathological activation patterns. This system can literally predict an ACL tear 2 to 3 steps before the event even happens, before the athlete even feels a pop. It's a total game changer. Historically, if you wanted this kind of data, you needed a $500,000 biomechanics lab with little markers stuck all over your body. But Kinexa Formation has completely bridged that gap. They bring elite, laboratory-grade precision straight into the real world, tracking markerless joint positions with errors of less than 15 millimeters. We can finally see the superposed states of human movement, just like Duchamp imagined, but in real time and in real-world conditions. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative question. If you are an athlete, a coach, or a physical therapist, are you just treating the symptom after the damage is already done, or are you correcting the actual underlying logic of the movement? Understanding this biomechanical audit changes absolutely everything. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this challenges you to rethink how you see every single step you take.